What are we discussing on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast? D-backs get walked off by the Colorado Rockies, and is the bullpen on DEF CON 1?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, we're talking about the D-backs getting walked off by the Colorado Rockies. Is the bullpen on red alert? And why the last wildcard spot isn't too bad. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But let's get into the podcast and let's talk about tonight's D-backs game against the Colorado Rockies, because game number one is not how we want to start off this series. After struggling against the Brewers and getting, shellacked in 2 out of the 3 games, maybe not shellacked, but losing convincingly in two out of the 3 games, really needed a nice bounce back reset series against the Rockies. D-backs not able to get that in game number one, as this game number one is very reminiscent of the same game number one that happened against the Brewers, because in the last series, the D-backs scored in the first inning against the Brew Crew. And then what happened? They did not score the rest of the game, and they ended up losing that game 2-1. In tonight's game, they scored 2 runs in the first inning, double last first game of the last series. But again, once again, score in the first inning and don't score once again, and the D-backs lose tonight's game. The pitching by Merrill Kelly, fantastic. After leaving the last start early, this was the silver lining in today's game, because I was nervous for Merrill Kelly. I was concerned for Merrill Kelly. The way he left his last start, I was like, is he about to go back on the injured list? Is he going to at least have to be on the mend and miss the next start? Even if he doesn't go on the injured list, maybe at least miss a turn in his rotation. I don't know. I was thinking some bad thoughts when I saw Merrill Kelly leave his last start early. Like, I thought it was like hamstring tightness. I know there was some cramps mentioned as well, but I thought maybe it was a little bit more serious than what has been led on. And I guess not, because Merrill Kelly came out tonight and had one of his best starts of the season and continued to build momentum off one of his more recent starts, to start before the last one where he left early with injury, because this was another good game by Merrill Kelly. 6 innings, only 2 hits, 1 earned run. Was he striking out a ton of folks? He had a decent amount, 5 Ks, but did a good job of not getting high pitch counts, only 82 pitches through 6 innings. Like, definitely, if this was full throttle, Merrill Kelly would have went out there for the 7th inning at the very least. So, again, just a step in the right direction for Kelly as he continues to build back arm strength, build up confidence, and just overall just get better. He spent so much time on the injured list. He's still hasn't completely gone to 100% right. We've seen him leave starts early since coming back. And so it's been an up and down season for Kelly. It's been a season from hell for Kelly and the Gallons and the Erods, and just this whole season's been so weird for the D-backs pitchers. So nice to see Merrill Kelly have a good start. ERA now down to 4 flat. Hopefully by the next start and the end of the season, Merrill Kelly could be sitting maybe around a 3.8 by the end of the regular season if he continues to pitch well. So glad to see Merrill Kelly have a great start as we inch closer to the postseason. But the D-backs offense was not able to bail him out. 1 for 4 with runners in score position, a decent amount of hits, 8 total, but not able to get the big hit tonight, as they did have a couple of opportunities. The first inning, Ketel Marte had a massive drive, 460 feet. Corbin Carroll started the game with the triple, Ketel Marte home run. It felt like we were going to be in for a big offensive performance by this D-backs team at Coors Field, and we just did not get that as this team went quiet. Bunch of double play balls in this game, right? Suarez, Walker, Perdomo all had big double plays. And then Perdomo, someone that has been so solid and stout defensively most of this season for the D-backs, has really been important in that area because we always talk about Perdomo and the play discipline that he provides for the D-backs at the bottom of the lineup and the timely clutch hitting that he provides as well. Like when we talk about Domo, it's a lot about his bat and what he does with his patience and what he can do on the base paths and his ability to sacrifice at the plate. But sometimes we don't talk enough about his defense, and that has been a real strength of this D-backs team, especially when you consider Blaze Alexander was the starting shortstop for the D-backs for so long this year, and he was really mediocre to below average in that. And Kevin Newman is fine, but you don't want to play Kevin Newman every single day. So Perdomo coming back offensively, defensively has been so important to this D-backs team. And tonight, bad play in that ninth inning that led to the run scoring a game-winning run for the Colorado Rockies, and it was a Perdomo error. It was just a bad defensive play, bad throw to first by Perdomo. You don't see that a ton. Bad job by the D-backs offense, and also bad job by the D-backs bullpen. Kevin Ginkel, we have to have a real conversation, which we'll talk about in segment number 2, but not a good job by him either. The D-backs bullpen has been struggling. The offense has been a little bit more hit or miss, a little bit more up and down recently as well. But at least when you look at this game, silver lining, Merrill Kelly had himself a really good performance. And now he can say in a few of his recent starts, he has a few good performances. So he's starting to build something as we get closer to the postseason. And the postseason, I mean, when looking at the standings, D-backs lose today. Mets get a huge walk-off. We're a game up on the Mets, 2 games up on the Braves for the third wild card spot. Definitely looking scary. Game number 2, D-backs versus Rockies. We got Jordan Montgomery back in the D-backs rotation with Ryan Nelson out. That is what the D-backs are going to do. Monty starting maybe against the Rockies could be a more advantageous matchup for Jordan Montgomery. We'll see. Ryan Feltner has been pretty good for the Rockies recently. I know because I picked him up a couple times in fantasy and he's delivered me some big starts. He's the reason I've made it to the championship round now in my fantasy baseball league. Ryan Feltner has been one of the reasons. So we'll see what Jordan Montgomery can do against the Colorado Rockies team. We didn't see the Rockies put up a big offensive game. So if you want another silver lining, the pitching for the most part did do well. The bullpen late in the game gave up an earned run, of course, but for the most part, you got good Merrill Kelly. Give up 3 earned runs total. Like that should be enough for your team to win. Let's pray the D-backs offense bounces back in game 2 and Jordan Montgomery can have one of his better starts of the season because it would be nice for him to also start building a little bit more momentum as we get closer to the postseason. And we'll also talk about in segment number 2 is the D-backs bullpen on red alert. And if you want to wager on the D-backs beating the Colorado Rockies in game number 2, then the place you want to go, of course, is going to be FanDuel because you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit fanduel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. And let's talk about the bullpen and if it's red alert, DEFCON 1 time, because the D-backs bullpen has been bad recently. And when you also consider the injuries to the pen, we are down bad. D-backs Nation at the deadline. I was coming on the podcast and I was saying, look, I know Seawald's been struggling, but we DFA'd Castro. McGuff's in AAA. We just trade for Floro. We just trade for AJ Puck. Right now, outside of Paul Sewald, this bullpen is 7 guys deep, and I feel good about every single one of them. This is the strongest D-backs bullpen that we've had in years. And now you fast forward to the final month of the season, final couple weeks, and I feel as bad for this D-backs bullpen as I've ever felt. My morale for this D-backs bullpen is as bad as ever because you got injuries to guys like Paul Sewald, and even if you go back to the Bryce Jarvises, who were really good as well, they're hurt. And when you think about the guys who are in the pen, I mean, Jordan Montgomery's starting now, but you didn't feel good about Monty in the pen when he was there. Brandon Hughes has been in the pen. Slade Zacconi has been in the pen all of a sudden, right? And guys who were good all of a sudden are struggling. When you look at the September splits for this D-backs bullpen, the numbers are not pretty. Slade was absolutely terrible this month, and thankfully the D-backs stemmed down because in 3.2 innings pitch, he was getting absolutely crushed in his short little sample size. I'm looking at the exact earned runs here. 7 earned runs and 3.2 innings pitched for Slade Zacconi, but he's not the only one. It's been a bad month for a lot of these D-backs relievers. Kevin Ginkel, prior to tonight, in 4 innings pitched, he had a 15.75 ERA, 7 earned runs and 4 innings pitched for Kevin Ginkel in the month of September. Thank God we DFA Dylan Floro. I was really excited when the D-backs acquired Dylan Floro. Thought he was the perfect kind of reliever, another back-end guy who had good numbers, but you did look at the advanced stats for Floro, and he was not good in high leverage situations. He thought maybe that could improve with the D-backs. It did not. It ended up rearing its ugly head because Floro was never in meaningful games with the Nationals, and then as soon as he had to play meaningful games with the D-backs, he was struggling because that's what the number said, and it ended up playing out. He got DFA'd, but now the D-backs bullpen is in complete chaos. Monty, 7 earned runs and 8.2 innings pitch this month as well. Ginkel, I just mentioned, terrible. Slade, I just mentioned, terrible. Ryan Thompson entering tonight, 5 earned runs, 4.2 innings pitch in the month of September. Even Justin Martinez, 4 earned runs and 6 innings pitch in the month of September. It has not been a good month for this D-backs bullpen. And right now, my morale for the pen, my confidence level in the pen is as low as it's ever been for a D-backs bullpen. There are guys who I like more than probably years past. I still like the combination of Ginkel and Justin Martinez and Puck and Mansupply and Ryan Thompson. Like on paper, this should be one of the strongest D-backs bullpens that they've had in years. At least during my time of covering the D-backs, I've taken over this podcast since 2020. On paper, this should be the D-backs' strongest bullpen. But right now, like I just mentioned, those guys aren't playing like it. Kevin Engel right now is bookending his season with terrible months. He started the season really bad with Paul Sewald out. He was on the injured list. He was on the mend. We needed Kevin Ginkel to step up, be the closer, and he was awful. Torey Lavelle had to do this whole little philosophy and game plan where you put him in low leverage situations, put him earlier in the game to rebuild Kevin Ginkel. Ended up turning into an elite reliever after that for a few months. But right now, he is back in the gutter and struggling. And maybe we have to do that once again with Kevin Ginkel. Same with the Ryan Thompson, who's been struggling. Same with Justin Martinez, who's hitting a little bit of a hiccup. The D-backs' best relievers right now are starting to hit a little bit of a wall, and it is the worst possible time to do that. This D-backs bullpen needs to be firing on all cylinders because when you go and look back at the D-backs run last year, their pen was a major reason why they were able to get to the World Series last year. The D-backs bullpen was so good in their postseason run last season, and Ginkel and Paul Sewald did not give up an earned run until the World Series. That D-backs bullpen was phenomenal last season. 3.58 ERA in the postseason last year. So many of the guys stepped up in the biggest moments, and right now the D-backs bullpen is failing them. Kevin Ginkel is struggling, giving up big earned runs in big moments. Same with Ryan Thompson. He is not coming through for this D-backs team right now. And with injuries to the Paul Sewalds and injuries to the Ryan Nelsons and us moving Monty back into the rotation, that means we have to call up another guy, another wild card for the bullpen. Like, there are just so many question marks for the D-backs right now when it comes to their pen, and the pen is just one of those areas on your baseball team that is so underrated, so overlooked at times, and it's just so important. When you look at the Houston Astros, you look at their run since 2017, one of the calling cards of the Houston Astros over the last few years is their bullpen. They're one of the best teams year in, year out when it comes to bullpen ERA. That has always been one of the Houston Astros calling cards. And it's not a surprise that they're always one of the last teams standing when it comes to the end of the season. You look at 2022, the Houston Astros, number one in the American League in bullpen ERA. They were top four, I think, in 2023. You even go back to like a 2021, like they were still pretty solid as well. Like year after year, you look at the Houston Astros bullpen ERA, always one of the best in baseball. And for the D-backs, it's probably been the area that they've struggled in the most since I've taken over this podcast, right? Their closer situation has always been bad. Even the guys before that, your eighth and seventh inning guys, have always been a struggle as well. This is one of the only times, at least on paper, where I like the names, I actually like the relievers, but they have to live up to their potential. They have to live up to the stuff that we know that they can throw. Right now, that they're not doing it, the bullpen can turn it around and get back on their horse. This is a team that can catch fire once again before the season ends and ride that wave and ride that momentum into the postseason. So the D-backs definitely need their bullpen to start to turn it around before the end of the regular season. And we'll talk about why the D-backs getting the last wildcard spot might not be the worst thing in the world in segment number 3. But hey, if you want to do a little daily fantasy sports, then the place I suggest is going to be Prize Picks, because Prize Picks is America's number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about the D-backs and the wild card chase, because you look at the standings right now. The Padres are starting to pull away from the D-backs in the NL wild card standings right now. They are 2 games up on the D-backs, and they are currently leading the Houston Astros at the time of me recording this podcast. So by the time you guys are listening to this, they might be up 2.5 games on the D-backs. They are taking the top wildcard spot by storm. Now, the D-backs still have one more series against the San Diego Padres this season, so it's not over yet. That is the final series of the year. And now thinking about it, okay, the D-backs are going to be home for that series, so I will definitely be going to those games. And it is Player T weekend, I can't forget. I will be going to every game. If you guys want to say what's up to me, I will be going to every game that final weekend against the Padres, and you're giving out sick T-shirts. I will be going to all those games. I was thinking if that series was in San Diego, maybe I'd do a little road trip out to San Diego to watch the boys, but it's going to be here, and the D-backs still control their destiny, potentially, depending on if it's still a 3-game series or not, for them to take that top wild card spot against the San Diego Padres as they look to pull away from the D-backs. And by the time you listen to the podcast, maybe they're up 2.5 games on the D-backs in the wild card. But I'm here to tell you, maybe that is not the worst thing in the world. Maybe the D-backs actually want the last spot in the wild card. And again, I'm going to make a blasphemous take because of what we just saw, but Padres right now taking the top spot. D-backs own the second wild card spot, but it's not by much, ladies and gentlemen. The New York Mets only a game behind the D-backs. The Braves are 2 games behind the D-backs. So it is a dogfight with those 2 NL East teams and the D-backs for that last wild card spot. And I don't want the D-backs to start tanking or start losing games, because I think when you're talking about the baseball gods, that is bad karma and juju. But I will say, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if the D-backs get the last wild card spot. That is where the D-backs got into the postseason last year. via the last wild card spot. And I think the D-backs can honestly run the gauntlet of what they did last year once again. And that's why I'm not against the D-backs getting last wild card spot, because I want to just see a repeat of what happened in 2023. D-backs get the last wild card spot, and guess who you get to face in the wild card round? Dun dun dun! You get to face the team you beat last year in the wild card round, in the Milwaukee Brewers. And I would love to face the Brew Crew. I know they just came into Chase Field and looked really good against Arizona, right? They just came in, took 2 out of 3. They shut down the D-backs offense game 1. Then they lit up the D-backs pitching staff in game number 2. And even after all that, I still don't believe in this Brew Crew at all. I still think in a postseason series, in a postseason matchup, I still believe this Arizona Diamondbacks team will still beat the Milwaukee Brewers when it comes to it. Push comes to shove, as the cliche, as the kids say. When it matters most, I think the D-backs will beat the Brewers in a postseason series. So that's why if we got the last wild card spot and we got to just run back what the D-backs did in 2023 to get the World Series, that is the path I want to take. Give me the give me the Brew Crew in round number 1. I don't want to see the Padres in round 1. The Padres, NL West opponent, foe, very familiar with the D-backs. I'm sure they're very comfortable going against us, going against our pitchers. How many times have they seen Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly in a regular season matchup, right? The Hassan Kims, those guys love to crush the D-backs, the Profars, the Jackson Merrills. It's always the complementary pieces. Do not want to see the San Diego Padres in round 1. I think that could get kind of bonkers, kind of crazy. Don't want to see them in the wild card round. And then the New York Mets, they always beat the D-backs for whatever reason. You go back the last few years, the New York Mets owned the D-backs in the regular season. They beat us every single series, and I don't know why. The personnel changes, the managers change, right? The New York Mets have like a new manager every single season. They get new personnel. D-backs get new personnel. Does not matter. The Mets seem to beat the D-backs every single year. And so I do not want to face that team either. I would much rather Padres versus Mets face each other. One of those teams knock each other out. I'm hoping it's the Padres, because I also would love to see the Padres versus the Dodgers or Phillies in round number 2. I don't want to face the Padres until the NLCS. I think it's way more fun watching the Padres go against the other teams just as like a bystander, as a fan. I think it's more fun for the D-backs to face the Brewers in the wild card round and then go through that path, and then watch the Padres go on their own path to the Mets and whoever they would have to face, because I just think it would be more fun for the D-backs and Padres to face each other later in the postseason than in the wild card round. And then also, I just want to see the Padres later in the postseason as well, because I would love to see that kind of team against the LA Dodgers. And then again, hopefully, D-backs beat the Brewers, and then you pray Dodgers finish with a better regular season record than the Phillies, because then you could face the Dodgers, I think, in round number 2. Uh, I believe that's how it'll go. You face the Dodgers then in round number 2. Rematch of how it went last year. Outside of Otani, it's really not that much different. I guess you got Yamamoto now. It looks like Glass now is going to be out the rest of the regular season. Made, I think, 1 or 2 more starts than his career high in starts for regular season. And then went on the injured list. I think Glass now is a stud. Never root for injury, but that's a guy who is always hurt. Not a surprise to see at all that he's going to miss the rest of the regular season with injury. And so I would not be upset at all if the D-backs had to face the Dodgers in the second round. I know they want their revenge. I know they want to face the D-backs and try to make up for what happened last year, get their retribution. But I would love to face the Dodgers again and once again knock them out in the postseason. If back-to-back years, Dodgers win the division, Dodgers win the head-to-head against the D-backs in the regular season, and then you get to the playoffs, and once again, the D-backs beat the Dodgers in the postseason, that's all I want. And then NLCS, give me either the Phillies or the San Diego Padres. I don't care who it is, but that would be way more fun. If it's the Phillies, then we literally get a rematch of last year's postseason run. And if it's the Padres, personally, that would just be a lot of fun. Crossover with Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres. Those crossovers would go dummy crazy if our 2 teams face each other in the NLCS with the right to face with the rights to go to the World Series. I think this is a better D-backs team than last year on paper. So this is a team that I think has to make some noise in the postseason. You cannot be a one and done. You, at the very least, the minimum, have to get to the NLCS. I think you probably have to do better than that. Get to the World Series. And I think your best path to get there is through that last wild card spot. I'm going to be happy with any spot the D-backs get in the postseason. But if I had a preference, give me the last wild card spot and give me the same path to the World Series that the D-backs got in 2023. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.